In this video series, I will guide you through the features of the motorized RR10 system. We're going to cover everything from the components to assembling and attaching it to the dashboard, and also programming the shading system. But before we dive in, let's begin by reviewing a couple of the key features. This shade will fit on a 1.5-inch wide dashboard, making it a perfect solution for those clients that need a narrow mounting depth. And with the name RR10, it's easy to remember that the shade can support weight of up to 10 pounds. And it can also accommodate a shade that's maximum size of 72 inches wide by 72 inches long. The RR10 motorized shade features the Rolle's Acmeda lithium-ion battery-powered motors, making the shade perfect for residential or small commercial projects. Now, this system also offers user-friendly handheld or wall-mounted remotes, as well as the ability to integrate with home automation. Now, another great feature of this system is if you have previously installed a manually operated shade in your client's home and they decide that they now want a motorized shade, that's not a problem, because you can easily retrofit this system and do it right on site. Having the right materials on hand is key to a smooth assembly process. So let's review the essential components and supplies needed to assemble your RR10 motorized Roman shade. First, you're going to need a dashboard that has a 1.5-inch projection, 2 of the narrow skyline brackets, 1.25-inch aluminum tube, the 1.25-inch pin end, 1.25-inch tube clips. And to make sure that my shade is compliant, I will be using ring locks. I will also be using the level locks. And on the back of my shade, I will be using the Clear Forever rings. And to help me adjust my shade, I will have orbs on hand. And I will also be using shade cord. You will need a lighter, 4 hex head screws to install your brackets onto your dashboard, a drill with a hex head bit for your screws. Now, I prefer using hex head because that's what my installer uses. And if he needs to make adjustments on site, it's going to make it a lot easier because we have used the same screws. Now, you will also need the Rolle's Acmeda 1.1 lithium-ion battery-powered motor, the crown and drive set, a remote control, a pair of scissors, and a power supply to charge your motor. And as I mentioned, having everything at your fingertips will really make the assembly process a breeze. Before you even begin to assemble your shade, you will want to make sure that your motor is completely charged. Now, I'm going to show you 2 different cable options that you have to charge your motor. So your first option is using the Rolle's Acmeda USB charging cable. So you're going to locate the motor charging port on your shade, and you're going to plug in the cable into the port, and then you're going to take the USB and plug it into the Rolle's Acmeda wall charging plug. Then you're going to, of course, plug it in to the wall and let it charge for at least 6 hours. Now, the other option you have is using the Rolle's Acmeda magnetic charging cable. Now, this charging cable has this little magnetic end that you will plug into the port on your motor. Pop that right in there, sideways. And then you would take the other end and plug it into the wall plug, just like that. And then the magnetic end attaches to the. Now that your motor is fully charged and you have your completed shade and all your supplies and components, you are ready to move on to the assembly stage. I want to share a couple more motor options with you. There are times that our clients are requesting a motorized shade for a smaller width window, and the lithium-ion battery-powered motors are just too large and won't accommodate a smaller size. So that's when we will choose the DC motor, which you can see is a lot smaller, lot narrower, I should say, in size. And now this motor is powered by an external battery or a power supply. Okay? And they're just real easy to plug in. The battery will plug into the motor. If you listen, you can hear it start. Okay. And then the battery is rechargeable. And there's the. Or you can use a power supply and just plug it into the wall. Now, the next option that you have is the lithium-ion battery-powered wand motor. And this wand motor pairs with the wand. Now, you can see on the end of the wand, we have all the controls, just like a remote control for your shade. And it's easy to connect the two. You simply put this right into that hook and then plug it in to the port. And what's great about it too is that it's rechargeable right here at the end of the wand, as well as on the motor head. With all these options at your fingertips, I'm sure that you will find one that suits you and your client's needs. I will now guide you through the steps of assembling your system and securing it onto the dashboard. So you can go ahead and attach your finished shade to your dashboard. Now, I don't go through these steps on how to do that because there are so many different ways that I will defer to you to use the method that you are accustomed to, right? So once your shade is on your dashboard, you can turn it over and attach the brackets. Now, if you can see here, I have already attached one of the brackets and pre-drilled my holes on the opposite side. So I'm going to take the narrow bracket, I should say, make sure my screw is going in the right direction. Secure that one. Okay. Now I like to place my bracket about 1/8 of an inch in on each side. And I do this because it gives me a little bit of a wiggle room on an inside mount shade. And also, if I am attaching my fabric side tabs, I don't want my bracket to push on them and push them out. All right. Okay, so next, I can just take and move my shade out of the way. And here's my aluminum tube. I have cut my aluminum tube 1 1/4 inches smaller than the finished width of my dashboard. Now this will ensure a nice fit once everything is complete. I will now take and attach the crown and drive onto the motor. Slide this right around, and you can see how there's a little groove here, and it will fit right into this little node, I'll call it, right there. Okay. And then on the opposite end, I will slide this right on. Okay. And then attach my clip. It will will slide like this. Hit snap. Now my motor is ready to go into my tube. Of course, we will look for a channel inside of the tube. And the little indentation on my motor. I would push it right in there, line it right up. Push. And twist it so we can get that lined. And then on the opposite end, I'm going to put in the pin in. Right. Now, it is ready to go into the brackets. Bring my shade back. And I always like to put in my pin in first. Then, and there you go, snaps right in place. Now that we have successfully assembled the system onto the dashboard, it's time to move on to the next step. We're going to be attaching the tube clips and stringing the shade. But before we get started, it's important to note that whether you have a manual operated or motorized shade, the steps that you will be taking will remain the same. To ensure that the shade is compliant with child safety standards, I have sewn the forever rings on the back of the shade 8 inches apart, and we'll be stringing it using ring locks. Let's begin by marking the tube for the placement of your C-clips. Now to do this, I find that it's handy if I take my system and align it side to side, and just where I can see the top of the first row of rings. And I will take my ruler, and I'm going to align my ruler at the center of my ring. And I'm going to make a mark on my tube 2 inches in, because we want to offset our clips 2 inches in from our row of rings. And I'll come to the other side, and I will do the same. Okay, I can see the center of my ring at 2 inch mark, and I'll make a pencil mark right there. Now, this shade only has 2 rows of rings, but if you had additional rows of rings, then you would do the same. You will offset them either to the right of that row or to the left of that row 2 inches. Next, you're going to cut your shade cord. I cut the finished length of my shade plus 10 inches. Then we will insert it into the hole on the top of the clip. Now, this is my personal preference to go through both of the holes. Some may only go through one. I want to make sure that my cord are secure, and I will do anything I can to avoid any callback. So I've inserted into one of the holes and down the other. Then now I'm going to tie a knot large enough to keep it from coming through those holes. And so I'll give it a little pull. So that's nice and secure. And I'll do the same to the other. Now, top and down the edge, on the other side, I should say. And again, just do some little knots. Securing the cord so it does not pull through the holes. Next step I'm going to take is I'm going to go to the end of the cord, and with the lighter, I want to seal the end. So carefully, I will just touch it and real quick pull on the end. Be careful not to singe your fingers. We do this so that the cord will slide through the hole in the ring lock. Let's now attach the C-clips to our tube. Now, when placing your C-clip on the tube, you want to make sure that the cord is coming out of the C-clip in the direction of the row of rings. Okay? Now you're just going to take the C-clip, and I always find one of the grooves on the tube and align the edge of the C-clip along that groove like this. And here's my 2-inch mark, and I just snap down. Okay, now we'll do the same on the other side, making sure that my cord is coming out on the left-hand side, and I will find that same groove along that 2-inch mark, slide this down and snap it into place. Then take my cord and run it under the tube. And doing the same on the opposite side. I've turned the shade so that you have a better view of how I string the shade. Now for every ring, you will have a ring lock. I've placed them here in the row. And for the bottom of the shade, you will need an additional ring lock, a level lock, and then, like I said, I will be using the orbs just to help me balance and align my shade. So we'll take the ring lock and place it on top of the ring, and then take our cord and slide it through the little hole in the ring lock. Same. This is a pretty quick process, and it really does go smoother when you have singed the end of that cord. Now this is the last ring in this row, and I will now pull my cord all the way through, and I will take my level lock and the level lock, you can see, has a little cutout. I'm going to take that cutout and place it in the little groove of the ring lock. Take my cord and run it through the hole. Making sure that it goes through the hole of the level lock. Okay, so now it's loose on the bottom, but this is where the orb comes in. I'm going to take and insert my orb into the bottom. And I'm going to slide it right up, maybe about a 1/4 of an inch from the last ring lock. Now I will be using the orb to help me make the final adjustments on the shade. Once the final adjustments are made, then I will secure that row of rings by locking in the level lock and removing the orb. Now I will finish stringing the shade. Attaching, placing the level lock into the ring lock, Sometimes it does pop out. Cord through and attaching the orb. Now that I have strung my shade, I will place it onto the valet to make my final adjustments and lock in the level locks. Placing your shade on a valet or maybe even L brackets that are extended from the ceiling will allow you to, number one, make sure that your system is operating correctly. And it will also allow you to make any final adjustments to ensure that your shade is properly aligned. Okay, so I'm going to make sure that I have 17.5 on this side, and I have 17.5 on this side. Now, should I need to make any adjustments, that's where the orbs come in. I can easily slide my orbs up or down to make sure that my shade is aligned. This one happens to be in alignment, so now all I have to do is lock those level locks in, remove the orb, and tie some knots to secure. And I will show you a close-up on that. Now, I normally do this step while my shade is up on the valet, but in order for me to give you a close-up, I need to put it onto the table. Now, this is my last row of rings, and here I have my level lock and my orb. So I'm going to pull it out just so you can see it better. Okay, now, I need to make sure that my level lock in the ring lock is up against my orb. Okay, and you can see the level lock is kind of loose inside. If you look closely, you will see that the level lock, the flat side of the level lock, is facing up. Now here is a little close-up view of a level lock. And you will see that it has a dome side and it has a flat side. And as I mentioned, the flat side is facing up. We are now going to grab that level lock and we're going to turn it. And I can go ahead and turn it, let go of the ring lock and turn it. Okay. And now the dome side is facing up. We now need to snap it in place. So I'm going to push it with my fingers, keeping it up against the orb. And like I said, when it's on the valet, it's easier. And you're going to push it to hear a little snap. Okay? And now you will see if I grab hold of it, let me grab hold of the string here, that it no longer moves. It is locked into place. Now I can take and remove my orb. And I'm going to take and do a little double knot down at the bottom. And some of you may not find it necessary to make this little knot. But again, I want to make sure that my shade is secure in every way that I can so that I don't have any callbacks. Okay. I'm doing a double knot because a double knot will not fit through should the level lock come undone, which I doubt that it will. The cord will not come through the hole in the ring lock. Again, this is just a personal preference, and you may not find it necessary. Okay, there you go. Before we get started, it's important to note that the steps that you will be taking are the same whether you're using the RR10 or the RR20 manual or motorized system. To ensure that the shade is compliant with child safety standards, I have sewn the forever rings on the back of the shade 8 inches apart, and we'll be stringing it using ring locks. Let's begin by marking the tube for the placement of your C-clips. Now to do this, I find that it's handy if I take my system and align it side to side, and just where I can see the top of the first row of rings. And I will take my ruler, and I'm going to align my ruler like at the center of my ring. And I'm going to make a mark on my tube 2 inches in, because we want to offset our clips 2 inches in from our row of rings. And I'll come to the other side, and I will do the same. Okay, I can see the center of my ring, a 2-inch mark, and I'll make a pencil mark right there. Now, this shade only has 2 rows of rings, but if you had additional rows of rings, then you would do the same. You will offset them either to the right of that row or to the left of that row 2 inches. Next, you're going to cut your shade cord. I cut the finished length of my shade plus 10 inches. Then we will insert it into the hole on the top of the clip. Now, this is my personal preference to go through both of the holes. Some may only go through one. I want to make sure that my cord are secure, and I will do anything I can to avoid any callback. So I've inserted into one of the holes and down the other. Then now I'm going to tie a knot large enough to keep it from coming through those holes. Okay, so I'll give it a little pull, so that's nice and secure. And I'll do the same to the other. Now, the top and down the edge, and the other side, I should say. And again, just do some knots. Securing the cord so it does not pull through the holes. Next step I'm going to take is I am going to go to the end of the cord, and with the lighter, I want to seal the end. So carefully, I will just touch it and real quick pull on the end. Be careful not to singe your fingers. We do this so that the cord will slide through the hole in the ring lock. Let's now attach the C-clips to our tube. Now, while placing your C-clip on the tube, you want to make sure that the cord is coming out of the C-clip in the direction of the row of rings. Okay, now you're just going to take the C-clip, and I always find one of the grooves on the tube and align the edge of the C-clip along that groove, like this. And here's my 2-inch mark, and I just snap it down. Okay, now we'll do the same on the other side, making sure that my cord is coming out on the left-hand side, and I will find that same groove, and along that 2-inch mark, slide this down and snap it into place. Then take my cord and run it under the tube. And doing the same on the opposite side. Now that your C-clips are attached to your tubes along with your cord, you can continue on and finish stringing your shade. Now that your shade is complete, it's ready to install. Now I have just a couple of tips for you. For an outside mounted shade, the most common and reliable way to install the shade is by using L brackets. but you want to ensure that your L brackets are level and positioned in a way that do not interfere with your brackets on the underside of the dustboard. You're simply going to secure your L bracket on the wall and then place your shade on top, and then secure that with two screws. Thank you for following along in this video series, and I certainly hope that you enjoy using the Rolling Zachnita Roman shade systems for all of your Roman shade needs. Let's begin programming your shade. I'm going to guide you through the easy steps of pairing the remote to the motor, checking the direction of the shade, setting the upper and lower limits, locking the remote, putting it to sleep, and restoring the motor to factory settings. When it comes time to program my shade, I do have it up on a valet, but for demonstration purposes, I have placed a motor here on the table just so I can give you a few close-ups. When pairing the remote, you will select the desired channel that you will be using to operate this motor. And I've chosen channel 1. Then you will take a paper clip or a very small tool, and I'm using a Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm going to press and hold the P1 button at the top of the motor head. I will wait for the motor to respond. I have a long beep, and I have 4 seconds to press my stop button. And now the motor has been paired successfully. We're now going to check the motor direction by pressing the up or the down arrow on the remote control. If the motor moves in the opposite direction of the arrows, then we know we need to change the direction of the motor. So I'm going to press the down arrow, and you can see that my shade is actually moving up. I'm going to hit the stop button, and to change the direction, I'm simply going to put my finger on the up and down arrow simultaneously and press down until my motor responds with a jog. Okay, and there's my jog. Now I will check one of the arrows to see what direction that the shade is going in, and we'll go up this time. And you see that the shade is now going up. When our shade is moving in the correct direction, we can set the upper and lower limit. I will press the upper arrow until my shade is in the desired top position. Okay, I will stop it right there. I will now press and hold my stop and up button until I get 2 jogs and 3 beeps. My upper limit is set. Now I can push the down button till I reach my desired lower limit. Hit the stop button. Now I will press and hold the down arrow and the stop button until my motor responds with 2 jogs and 3 beeps. Now the upper and lower limit have been set, and I will take my shade and let it go up to make sure that it is indeed set. I have a slow stop. And now I will hit down arrow and make sure that it stops at the lower limit that I have set. So the upper and lower limits are now set. The upper and lower limits have been set, and if there are no other shades that we need to program to this remote, then we can go ahead and lock it. And we can do that by turning the remote over. At the bottom right is a button with a little lock above it. If we press this button, I'm going to turn it over, and we'll watch our screen here. I'm going to press the button. You see a U, that's for unlock. We hold the button, an L will appear. That means that the remote is now locked. Now, if we need to unlock the remote and go into programming mode again, we simply do the same thing. We'll turn. We'll see the flashing U. This means that it is now unlocked and we can go back into programming mode. After we have programmed the motor, we can now engage the sleep mode. And this will prevent the motor from accidentally running when it's being transported from our studio to the client's location. So let me show you how to do that. Using my screwdriver, I'm going to press and hold the P1 button until the motor jogs 2 times. I have 2 beeps. Now, if I go to my remote, I press up or I press down, you see that my motor is not moving. So during transportation, like I said, it will keep your shade from accidentally running. Now, once the shade is installed, the installer can wake the motor up. Now, during the time that it's asleep, it will retain all the programming that we have done on the motor. So let me show you how to wake it up. And with that screwdriver, we're going to put it back into the P1 until we get 1 jog. And 1 beep. All right. Now we can check the motor. Stop it. And now you can see it's awake. Now, there are times that we need to take the motor back to factory settings. So let me show you how that is done. Again, with my screwdriver, or if you're using a paper clip, we're going to press and hold the P1 until the motor jogs 4 times and I get 4 beeps. Now, your motor is back to square one, and you can begin programming your motor. Now, in just a few simple steps, you have successfully programmed your shade. If you have any other programming needs, be sure to refer to the instructions that come with your remote. Thank you so much for following along with me in this series.